Creekside Youth. I'm coming to you on the road. I got Sky here. I got Huxley back over there. So we're hanging out. So we're going to do soul study on the road. So here's where we're at. We've been talking about how your soul has the propensity to be healthy or unhealthy. And right now it's going to have a much higher propensity to be unhealthy. So that's what we've been talking about. And we've been looking at ways that you can help your soul be healthy. We've been looking at the needs of your soul. We started out by looking at how your soul needs rest, and then then we went from there to look at how your soul needs responsibility, needs to give its best to something, and now we've been talking about how your soul needs restraint. The phrase we've been using is that your soul needs to be able to say, I can, but I shouldn't, so I won't. So that's what we've been talking about so far. And so as we're looking ahead to today, what we're going to be talking about is we've looked at what it looks like to exercise restraint emotionally and physically. And now we're here at the spiritual side of things. What does it look like to say, I can, but I shouldn't, so I won't spiritually? What does it look like to exercise spiritual restraint? So here's a couple of thoughts for you about what spiritual restraint looks like. I would say first and foremost, when it comes to spiritual restraint, we're thinking of the first thing that comes to my mind is God has a bunch of rules and I need to exercise spiritual restraint so as to not break those rules, right? So I've got to stay in God's good graces. I've got to do good things. I've got to be kind. I've got to be loving. I have to do enough. And when I do enough, then God will love me more. And that's kind of the vicious cycle that we get in, right? And so we think that what God cares about most and what we tend to care about most is the restraint that we exercise when it comes to the rules, okay? So that's generally our understanding when we're talking about spiritual restraint of like, oh yeah, Jackson, you're right, I shouldn't lie, right? Like I need to exercise restraint in that. I shouldn't look at stuff I shouldn't look at. So I'm going to exercise restraint there. I shouldn't gossip about my friends. So I'm going to exercise restraint there. I shouldn't binge on social media. I should read my Bible a little bit more, right? Like fill in the blank of the things I should exercise restraint in. But I would say that those are, that would be really well in line with what we would see all through the Bible as legalism, where you've got these Pharisees who add rules to the rules to make sure that they keep all the rules, and they're exercising fantastic restraint over their physical bodies, right? But that's not exercising spiritual restraint. To follow rules isn't to exercise spiritual restraint, and we already know that we can't win following the rules. We fail every single time because we're not great. God is great, right? Like that's the distinction. So if when we're thinking about restraint, we're thinking about rule following and am I doing enough? And am I giving enough? And is God happy with me? Well, then we're dipping right into legalism with our spiritual restraint. So spiritual restraint shouldn't be about rules. Now, I would agree that obedience is involved in our spiritual relationship with Jesus, but it shouldn't be about rules when we're talking about spiritual restraint, because that's not even spiritual restraint. That's a physical restraint that we're exercising, hoping that it will yield spiritual benefits. Oh, that was good. That is a physical restraint that we're exercising, hoping that it will yield spiritual benefits for us. But that's not spiritual restraint. So what is spiritual restraint? Spiritual restraint is the simple fact that this is what it is. It's so beautiful. Spiritual restraint is the simple fact that you have to come second in the way that you think. You have to come second in the way that you think. It is a daily restraint. It's the picking up of your cross. It's the submitting and the sacrificing of your wants and your desires to the wants and desires of Jesus. That's what it looks like to exercise spiritual restraint. You want to talk about spiritual restraint? Talk about carving out time to be with Jesus. Right? Not to do for Jesus, not to read my Bible for Jesus so he's happy with me. That's legalism, right? Spiritual restraint is I can, hi Hux, I can play video games right now. I can hop on Netflix. I can binge social media right now. I can go hang out with my friends right now. I can fill in the blank, right? But I know what I should be doing. I should spend some time with Jesus today. I should spend some time being with him. Because when you spend time being with Jesus, that's countercultural. That's countercultural, because everything else that you do in life is about what you're doing, right? Everything, your parents care about what you're doing, your friends care about what you're doing, your boyfriend or girlfriend cares about what you're doing, your teachers care about what you're doing. The world operates on do and do and do and do. That's what the world cares about. But when you take some time and you say, I shouldn't do these other things because I need to just be. I need to stop doing. I need to be with Jesus. And you spend some time being with Jesus, you're stepping into a countercultural moment. Something that is so opposite of how we live and operate right now, because we're all about doing, and we step into a moment of sitting and just being with Jesus. And so that's the first part of exercising spiritual restraint. You want to submit more to Jesus? You want to put his desires before your desires? Well, first you have to spend time being with him. We're going to talk about this in the next portion of our soul study when we get into relationship. But how can you possibly submit to Jesus's desires if you don't know what they are, because you don't exercise a relationship with him? See, spiritual restraint isn't about your rule following. Your rule following is never going to yield a relationship. Your rule following is never going to yield the results that you hope it will. It's taking time to sit and be with Jesus, broken as you are, messed up as you are, failure as you are. Taking time to sit and to be with Jesus is the start of spiritual restraint. To say, I can do so many other things to start my day. I can watch YouTube. I can make this awesome morning routine. I can go make myself some oatmeal. I can fill in the blank, right? I can do all of these things, but I shouldn't. I shouldn't do all of those things before I spend time just being with Jesus. Not doing for him, not checking off a box, but just being with him, listening to him, hearing what he has to say to me, hearing how he cares for me, what he's wanting me to pay attention to in my life. Spending some time to read his word, not so that I can make him happy with me, but so that I can know him more, so that I can get more richness out of being with him. That's spiritual restraint. That's the first key to spiritual restraint. And when you start being with Jesus regularly, you'll get to know Jesus. You'll get real familiar with Jesus. And as you start to get real familiar with who he is and how he operates, well, then spiritual restraint kicks it up a notch, because you're not just spending time being with him, but now what you're going to start to see as you spend time being with him is that Jesus has opinions. Jesus cares about how certain things happen in your life. Jesus cares about what you're doing. Jesus cares about who you spend time with. Jesus cares about what you listen to. Jesus cares about what you watch. And he's not trying to limit you or take away good things from you, but he cares about what you're putting into your mind and your body and your soul. And as you spend time with him, you'll realize some things he really cares about. Some things he really cares about. Other things he's flexible on. But some things he really cares about. Some things are a matter of conscience, and some things he seriously cares about what it means for you to be watching this thing or hanging out with this person or doing this thing. And as you spend time with him, you'll begin to understand him and what he cares about a little bit more. And then now you have the opportunity to exercise spiritual restraint in obedience. Not obedience to rules, not obedience to regulations, hoping that'll yield a spiritual result. No, you've been putting in the spiritual restraint work of being with him. And it's being with him that will lead to obeying him. Because as you're with him, you'll realize this isn't just a friend. This isn't just like some comforting, cuddly teddy bear I hang out with. That's not who Jesus is. Jesus is a king. Jesus is a king, and he's got a kingdom, and I'm a part of that kingdom. And because he's a good king, he cares about what happens to that kingdom. He cares about what happens to the people in that kingdom. He cares about what happens to me, and he has opinions. And so now my goal in my life, now that I'm spending time being with him and I'm getting to know this king a little bit more, my goal is I want to yield to the king in all things I possibly can. I want to pick up my cross daily and say I'm not my own. I don't belong. I was bought at a price by my king. And now what my king thinks about what I watch, what my king thinks about what I do, what my king thinks about what I say, what my king thinks about who I hang out with, what my king thinks about what I do with my time, that matters to me. That's a big deal to me. And all of the sudden, spiritual restraint is entering into the physical world. But it starts spiritually. It starts taking that time to be with Jesus spiritually, getting to know him as your king, as your friend, as your companion. And it's that time spent being with him that will lead to all that changes in what you do. Because obedience in the context of relationship is a whole different thing. It's a whole different thing. It's why when your parents tell you to do something, it carries more weight than when your teacher tells you to do something, because you don't have that close of a relationship with your teacher. But you've got a very close relationship with your parent. So it has influence, it carries weight because it's in the context of relationship. So when we think of spiritual restraint as just merely following rules, we're missing out on all that spiritual restraint is. Because remember, your soul craves to say, I can, but I shouldn't, and I won't. Exercise dominion spiritually. You're not a victim to just binging time on things that will never satisfy you. You're not a victim to just spending time doing things that are dumb, that aren't going to give you satisfaction in life. You're not a victim. You don't have to be. You have dominion. You have the ability to say, I can do all of these things, but I need to spend time with Jesus. I shouldn't do those things because I need to spend time with Jesus, so I won't. I can, but I shouldn't, so I won't. So that's what spiritual restraint looks like. It starts with being with Jesus, and it leads to everything that changes as we get to know him, as we fall deeply in love with him. And it begins to change every little aspect of who we are. And can I tell you that when you spend time being with Jesus and you start to exercise spiritual restraint, obeying him, I just want to make real clear for you a misconception that we have. We often think that if I obey Jesus, I will become less and less like somebody I want to be. I will be less and less, I will be less and less an individual, because we're still thinking in the rules mindset, right? I follow all of Jesus's rules, and then I end up being this spiritual robot, and I don't look like me anymore. I look like some holy thing that is like people don't want to be around. I don't want to be around whatever that thing is that I see off in the horizon. It doesn't seem fun. It seems really judgy. It doesn't seem like a fun lifestyle to live. So why wouldn't I do the things I want to do and have a little Jesus on the side? This is what I'll tell you. When you start exercising spiritual restraint in your relationship with Jesus, you don't become less of an individual, you become more of an individual. Can I tell you, the fact that you binge your free time on video games and social media and Netflix, the fact that you look at things that you shouldn't, that you gossip about your friends, that you have broken relationships, that you're mean to people, that you're not loving and kind to people, that you love drama, all of those things, those are the least individualistic things about you. Those are the least special things about you. Why? Because it's true of everybody. It's true of everybody. Submitting to Jesus means you actually lose the stuff that's less individualistic. You lose the fact that you sin in those ways, the fact that you binge in those ways. Those are the least special things about you. Everybody does that. When those things begin to dissipate, you become more yourself than you've ever been before. Because obviously, as you start to live as your Creator has designed you to live, of course you're going to look more and more like who He made you to be. And He didn't make us robots. He didn't make us all the same. So submitting to Jesus and exercising obedience doesn't mean we'll just become slaves to these rules and then all of a sudden we kind of lose who we are. You'll become more yourself living with Jesus in this way. You'll become more yourself. Spiritual restraint starts with being with Him. It leads to changing everything that we do. And when it changes everything that you do, man, you will be more yourself than you've ever been. I love you guys so much. Hope this leads to a great conversation. See you guys soon.